Sorry for the mini delay. We are super excited that you are here with us for this awesome panel on top tactics for increasing your net revenue retention. My name is Janisha Jones. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm going to be your tech host for today's panel. But before we get started, I just wanted to do a quick overview and introduce you all to MSP. So for those of you that are not familiar with modern sales pros, where have you been? We are the world's largest and highest quality community for those in sales management, sales leadership, sales and revenue operations, and sales enablement, aka MSP. Have I said sales enough for everybody? Our mission is to create an environment for our members to answer questions they struggle to solve on their own and help them see around corners they may not know about. We do that through live sessions just like this one, on online forum. We have quarterly summits, and we're starting to get back to in-person events. So if you're not already a member of MSP, don't worry, you will be invited to join us after this awesome panel. But before we get started, I just wanted to give super huge thanks to today's sponsor. The session would not be possible without the sponsorship from the awesome folks at Catalyst. So please, snaps, kudos, give them all of the love. They will do a, we're going to pass it over to our awesome moderator to give a quick introduction of Catalyst a little bit later. But before we get started, I just want to do one more thing, which is housekeeping. So we're super excited for you all to hear from this awesome panel, but just before we get into it, first, this event is being recorded. You'll be able to access the recording and key takeaways on the previous events page of the MSP website. Second, if you have any questions for our panelists, and we know you do, and we are super excited for them, please feel free to put them in the chat or in the Q&A section of your Goldcast screen. If you see on the right-hand side, you should see the Q&A feature. Feel free to throw your questions in there, and we'll be sure to get it to them during the event. So let's get started. I'm done talking. I'm going to pass it over to our awesome moderator, who is also, fun fact, the co-founder and CEO of Catalyst, Edward Chu. Edward, feel free to take it away, and I'll see you guys a little bit later.
Janisha, thank you so much. And thank you everyone for having us here. And thank you for giving us the time to talk about this very important topic. Before I get started, I just want to give a quick intro on Catalyst. We are the first customer success platform that's built by an ex-CS leader. Very much like everyone on this call, I used to do everything, all things customer success. I handled all the quarterly business reviews. I woke up at 3 a.m. when customers were complaining. I was the one begging customers to build features for me. And this is why I decided to build my own tool to solve my own pain points. I don't recommend that to anyone on this call or watching this, because that was just a painful experience. But I did that so everyone else wouldn't have to. And that's why when you log into Catalyst, it looks and feels like it's built by somebody who's done your job before. I'm very excited to be here to talk about this, both as an ex-operator and now the CEO of a customer success platform, because NRR is just so important. It's the #1 topic that every single company is talking about, especially during a market downturn where the economy is bad. There's things happening around COVID. Every single CEO and executive is being told by their board, whatever you do, do not lose the customers that we already have. So I'm very excited today to have 3 amazing people to talk about this topic and share some of the strategies that they see within their organization. Why is it important, and how are they implementing things to make improvements on the most important metric for you guys as an organization. So I'm going to walk around and have everyone introduce themselves. Mark, you are the CEO of Recap. Maybe you can give a quick intro on yourself and the company.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for having me. Really excited for to be along amongst this panel. But my name is Mark. I'm the CEO of Recapped. And whether you're, managing a proof of concept or an evaluation, or closing a B2B deal, or, onboarding a new customer, there's a lot of moving parts, and it's really easy for things to fall apart, right? Especially when we have so many different platforms like Salesforce and Slack and you name it, right? And really what you end up having is 12 different people talking past each other on 12 different platforms. And so what Recapped is we're really the first customer collaboration platform that helps every internal stakeholder and every external stakeholder, including your buyers, your customers, collaborate together through a mutual action plan or a shared collaborative workspace. And so our entire vision is really to just create a simpler way to do business through collaboration, alignment, and transparency. So
thank you, Mark.
Really
I
excited
don't think
about this topic.
there's more important thing than getting cross-functional alignment, not just internally, but also externally. So super cool on what you guys are building.
Yeah,
Rachel, Chief Customer Officer at Lean Data. The title Chief Customer Officer is by far my favorite. No offense to Mark and Will on this call, but it is by far the most important role that every single organization needs to have, as this person who is next to the CEO and personally responsible for the success and outcome of customers. So Rachel, thank you for being here. Please introduce yourself and your company.
Oh, thanks so much. And thanks for having me. Yes, being the Chief Customer Officer, NRR is a super important topic. So I'm excited to be here to give my thoughts and input on this. So Lean Data is a Salesforce native software that helps organizations to optimize their go-to-market. Whether that's a high volume inbound, account-based, demand unit waterfall, or the new modern B2B revenue waterfall. We really help to understand when you see those buying signals, now whether that's a prospect or a customer, and help to connect to the team that has to make what we call the play. So that could be a customer that is interested in a new product, and we let the CSMs know. Part of our mission is to help connect across all of the go-to-market technologies that are out there. There's so much in the sales stack and marketing stack, and even as the CS tech stack grows. So ideally, we would be able to work with you, Mark and Edward, in your organizations to really help to connect across those silos. And so that's why I joined Lean Data. I'm super passionate about how we help improve those buyer experiences. I'm also the host of the OpStars podcast, where we talk all things about revenue operations across marketing, sales, and customer success. My mission there is to enable RevOps pros to support each other, tell stories, share lessons learned and ideas, because we know, if we have a problem, someone's probably solved it out there. So happy to and excited to be here today and look forward to the conversation.
And that couldn't be a better tee off for Will, who is the VP of Revenue Operations at Brazen. And just for the crowd knows, we wanted to make sure we have a good mix of perspectives. So we have a CEO, we have a Chief Customer Officer, and we now have a head of revenue operations, which is one of the most critical functions that supports every aspect of the go-to-market motion. So Will, take it away, and then please introduce yourself and your company.
Thank you so much, Edward, and really excited to be here and to share some of my thoughts as well as learn with all of you. So a little bit about myself. I came up through customer success and found my way into revenue operations. And really, it was because I saw it as an opportunity to continue to help the customer and put the customer first. A little bit about Brazen. We help customers reach, convert, and accelerate their hiring process. So we have a platform of tools that really put and scale the human aspects of hiring so that we can put the human back into the hiring process. So really excited to be here and share some of the things that I've learned along the ways, but also learn with all of you as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Will. Well, thank you everyone for being here. Let's go ahead and get started. So as I mentioned, this topic of NRR is such an important metric that every single organization looks at. I'd love for each of you guys to talk about why is this metric so important specifically to your organization? How does your leadership team talk about it? And lastly, who's driving the outcome of these goals? Is it you guys? Is it you and the board? Is it you and the entire organization? So Mark, maybe we could start with you as a leader of your organization as CEO. Why is this metric so important, and how do you ensure everyone else is behind it? Mark, you're on mute, I believe.
Sorry about that. I always try and be mindful of that, but here we are. Yeah, thank you. I think there's obviously a lot to unravel, but I think if you look at, first and foremost, why is it important? I think because ultimately it is the biggest leading indicator of your business success, in my opinion, and your customer success, right? More importantly than anything else. And if you look at all of the fastest growing companies over the last decade, I think almost all of them have higher than 120, higher than 130, some of them even higher than 140% NRR, right? Which really means that if they do nothing and they stop, they're still going to grow 20, 30, 40% year over year, right? And that you cannot have that kind of growth if you're not satisfying the value and the needs of your customers, right? And so I personally think of it, as a product leader and as a CEO, NRR is a lagging indicator for how happy our customers are. And if they're successful and they're growing, we're going to grow as a side product.
Yeah, I love when you say if they do nothing, because I think all of our NRR is pretty good, and I would all love to just stop and do nothing, but that's obviously not the reality. Rachel, as the Chief Customer Officer and the person that's probably the most responsible outside the CEO for this metric, how do you guys talk about it at Lean Data, and why is it so important for your organization and the teams that you lead?
Yeah, I think to echo what Mark said, it is definitely a big indicator of the health of our customer base and how we're doing the customer base. But we also take a look at the trends over time and break down sort of cohorts or segmentation to really understand how we're doing in those subsegments to ensure that we have, really great growth, whether we're talking about our small business cohort or our enterprise clients. So I think, you can also look at it as a cohort analysis as well, because you might have it, you could be masking, challenges, you could be masking, churn in the small SMB group by having huge growth in your enterprise. So we also try to take a look and do that double click into what's really going on in terms of trends on a segment level.
Thank you. Well, inside of revenue operations, as a function that supports other segments and other business metrics, how do you guys measure NRR? Is it measured by time frame? Is it by segments? How do you help everyone else in your organization truly understand how they're driving impact on NRR and what areas need to be improved?
Yeah, I think the answer is both for us at Brazen. So we look at different timeframes as well as segments. And I think it really depends on your own business and really understanding how to segment those customers or even segment the data to really be able to draw meaningful insights and ultimately develop action plans from those insights. So some of the things that we constantly do is look for those indicators and how to group our customers together, because it does change. But we find key indicators such as industry and customer size that lead us to really healthy pockets of NRR. What we do with that information is then figure out the why, so that we can then develop strategies to reinforce and grow it even more. So an example would be that recently we found that a certain level of employees and industries were performing really well with our NRR, and we started prioritizing features and functionalities for those groups of individuals. And we took that full funnel and said, hey, new business, let's start focusing here as well.
Well, that's really interesting. What about for the segments that aren't performing well? I know it's obviously the easiest move to just double down on the segments that are doing well. How does your team address the funnels that aren't doing so well as an organization? How is that information passed? How is that information improved? Or is it just cast away to the corner while you guys are doubling down given startup resources? And I'd love to hear, Mark and Rachel, if you guys have a perspective as well.
Yeah, I could imagine with a group, and this is tapping into my former customer success mottos, never leave a customer behind. So ultimately, it's not about not prioritizing. I think we're all faced with really hard decisions all the time. What we're really saying is that this decision is best for Brazen and the customers. And so we're going to prioritize these segments, but it's not saying we're not going to do anything for the others, which is a very key distinguishing tactic that we want to really make sure doesn't happen. It's that we really want to figure out what's working well so that we can figure out if we can't repeat that in other areas and other segments.
Got it. Thank you. Rachel and Mark, what about for each of your organizations? Right now, one of the things that we see is it's incredibly hard to hire. So when you have different segments, obviously you have your high touch segments in which you have a CSM that is personally responsible for the success and outcome. But as your company is growing faster than you can hire, how are you guys handling the funnels that are just growing so rapidly that maybe aren't receiving the attention, where NRR is potentially struggling, or is it struggling?
Yeah, I can jump in on some of this. We actually went through, it's an excellent question. We just recently went through an exercise where we segmented our customers out, right? Before, a year ago, we were just happy to get customers and, being how early we were, now we're actually, we have the luxury and kind of the privilege of being able to sit down and say, okay, different levels of customers are going to get different levels of support or prioritization, right? Which is natural. One thing that we also identified is that, for our very small or maybe, 1, 2, or 3 licensed users, like they're not going to be getting the dedicated package that a 100-user account would, right? So for us, it's been one of the biggest challenges for us. It's just been, how do we enable the customer to be successful without any customer support and to be able to go in and essentially self-service their way to success, right? And so knowledge base, articles, better job on the product, tutorials, making things more intuitive, content. This has all been a really big initiative for us. And really, I mean, my ultimate goal is that we don't need to provide any success because the product sells itself and is so intuitive. Obviously, I think that's a dream that we can all push for, and it's not reality for a lot of us. But that's how we're thinking about it. And, really just trying our best to identify what potential expansion looks like. All right. So like, for example, anytime someone partners with us and becomes a customer, we're mapping out what is the maximum upsell that we can get. And is this even an area that we should go after? And if it is, then how do we deliver the maximum impact and value? And then NRR will follow.
Yeah, and I think Snowflake has changed the market perception that they have a 160 or 170% net dollar retention, and they don't even have a CS team, and the product just sells itself, and they print money. So, what a wonderful business! What a wonderful business that is. Rachel, what about you?
Well, I think you bring up a good point there, because I think that you could consider NRR could be controversial because it really does depend on how you measure it, or even how you structure the way you might land and expand, because you could potentially game the system. So for example, I can land a customer with, hey, I know what we have like a user-based model, right? I'm going to buy for 50 people. You could say, hey, I'm going to buy for 50 people in my sales team. Well, I have 40 today, but I'm hiring 10 more. So I'm just going to buy 50 licenses and I'll have them for this year. What we could say to them is, buy for 40. Then, in 6 months, we'll add another 10. Okay, that's going to make my net retention look better because I've kind of strategized to have the customer grow in a certain way. So we measure net retention, but we just shifted to looking at the net dollar amount quarterly. So we've broken the net retention, which is really comprised of 2 pieces, the churn or downseller loss, right? And the growth. And the percentage comes based on what is that percentage of expiring, right? I mean, we all know, net retention is subtracting the, churn from the growth, and then the denominator is the expiring. So we said, let's break it down and let's look quarterly on how are we doing with the churn. We want to keep that churn to a certain percentage. We don't want it to go, let's say, below 90. So let's monitor that and see how we're doing with churn and make sure that we don't have cohorts that we're losing or downselling, so that we can focus on that, because we know that every point of churn we can save is pretty huge. Then we look at how are we growing that base? How do we offset that churn to get to what we want from a growth perspective for that quarter? So we separate those 2 things on a dashboard, and then the team has a net dollar amount they need to hit. So we model 10% on the churn. We have the growth amount to get to that net dollar, and then we track against the dollars. That also has enabled the teams to go, okay, let's figure out where we're going to focus to grow. We can put together a plan. We can create a forecast, and that really gives us the dials to achieve that net retention. That's new for us this year, but it's really been a great shift because the teams can get their arms around the churn dollars and the growth dollars. Net retention as a metric, like you said earlier, it's lagging, is at the end, and we can't do anything about it. So we've broken it down that way. Edward, I don't know if that's helpful, but that's how we're measuring it. We're making it discrete in the quarter.
That's incredibly helpful and perfect timing from a question from the crowd. And first of all, before I go into this question, if anyone else has any questions, please drop them into the chat as this person just did, and I will kind of structure it throughout this process so you're not waiting for the very end in case you have to hop off early. But a question for, and specifically Rachel, I think, what is your perspective on NRR being a responsibility of the account manager, parentheses, they put parentheses, customer sales versus the actual CSMs? You talk about the goals and measurements that you've set for your team. What is the breakdown of responsibility from upsell to protection of that revenue, to product adoption, to implementation? All of that plays a major role in creating a good NRR.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I think back to what I just said earlier, by breaking down into the two components of, hey, how are we managing the retention and the, kind of keeping that churn and ensuring that we have health on that front. The CSMs really monitor that retention and the renewals. We just added pretty recently account managers across our accounts who do have a goal for growth. Now, of course, that motion has to be sensitive in the customer base, but sales folks being what they are, they do a much better job of teeing up and getting customers to buy than the CSMs who are making sure we're driving adoption and other things. So we've kind of divided it that way, where we do have gross retention goals for the CSMs, as well as some expansion goals for the AMs. So you still have people in their discrete roles doing what they do best. Together, we as an organization produce that NRR.
Yeah. Mark or Will, do you guys have a different model at your organization?
It is very, very similar to Rachel's that she just explained. So I won't repeat that. But one change that we really implemented is that to balance and really prioritize the impact that gross retention has on net retention, is that not only do we have that one bookings target that takes in consideration what the retention dollars and the upside of the net retention dollars are, we put in gross retention accelerators. So we have really used that as a means to really make sure that there's a focus on both, which is not easy to do by any means. But it is something that we wanted to make sure that we highlighted, is that the easiest way to obtain net retention is improve your gross retention. And so with that in our comp plans, we're really looking to share that behavior with the team.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for that, Mark.
Yeah. So for us, being a CHH company, our wonderful CSM team does a little bit of everything, right? They're onboarding, they're solving support tickets, you name it, right? They're incredible. But what we've done is we've really tried to divide. Our CX team is really the trusted advisors, right? They're enabling success. And if they see that there is an opportunity for upsells or expansion, they're actually looping in our account executives who are then running that process and actually doing the job selling. And we're double comping, right? We want to create really just a collaborative environment between both teams, so there's no infighting or there's no tension, as sometimes is unfortunately really common between teams. And I imagine we'll probably move towards this model later, but right now it's just our CSMs run everything.
Yeah, I'm not envious of your CSM. I can recall the days when I was the head of customer success, but before I hired anyone, I was the one doing everything. So that was a stressful time. So certainly, I'm sure I speak for most of the folks on this call if you are the first CSM or the first CS hire for your organization. Speaking of that, I think a lot of times NRR, while it is a very important topic, that may not be the foundation or the focus or the mission for an organization. It may not even be the most important metric, even as we're talking about it. How have the three of you seen your organization unify the focus on NRR? How do you prioritize between the pressures on trying to sell as many as you can, sometimes bring in bad fit customers that aren't part of your ICP for the sake of closing those dollars? sometimes building features that can help you land that monster Fortune 100 logo, but it completely is irrelevant to the rest of your customer base. And it obviously has tremendous impact. You don't have unlimited engineers. So this question is directed at any of you. Like, how have you seen how do you guys unify your company around the mission of NRR?
Yeah, I'll kick things off. I think from my perspective, it starts with just an overall objective as a company. And so what we've done at Brazen is it's really clear where we want to head. We really want to focus on the talent acquisition space. There's tremendous pain in the process of being hired and even finding candidates to be hired. And so with that objective, we now can operate as independent teams that specialize in RevOps, for me, to use that as a guiding point. So if a feature or a product recommendation or a customer that is not aligned with the talent acquisition challenges we're trying to solve for, that's an easy no, right? There are features that maybe some of those customers are like, hey, but it's related and we really think that this is going to help other customers. Absolutely. Like we're in a place where we want to be collaborative through that process. And that, I think, is certainly something that we do all the time, is listen to our customers and help build a roadmap together to make sure that it not only works for them, but it extends and works for all of our customers.
They always say it's related, though. That's the oldest trick to try and get you to build things for them. I'm sure it's going to help your other customers. Rachel or Mark, what about either of you?
Mark, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we're in a lot of ways, right? I think I think we do a better job of unifying the company around this, right? I think leadership very much is like this. NRR is something top of mind, but one thing that we're implementing later this quarter is actually OKRs for the purpose of this, right? Being able to go in and say, okay, here are the top 3 metrics that we're going to focus on for the next 6, 9, 12 months. And it's growth, it's NRR, it's revenue, and it's like this one KPI that we're going to be tracking to internally, which is going to be the success of our customers, right? Really, the way we relay a lot of messages is through all hands, and really just making sure that everyone understands also the why behind these metrics, right? It's one thing to be like, hey, we're going to focus on NRR, but having these kind of conversations internally and making sure that everyone's really on the same page and just rowing in the same direction, that I think is the most important piece.
Mark, I love that. And I think one of the key things that for the audience here is that simplifying the metrics that you're tracking as a whole and not having a wide range of metrics that is going to confuse everyone, honing in on those 2-3 things that the company is all unified against and continuously reporting on is a great way to do that. Rachel, for lean data, you guys have probably so many customer requests. You guys have different types of customer segments that you're trying to serve. How do you help and enable the product and engineering team to help the CS team drive NRR? As Chief Customer Officer, I think you have the tough job of building that bridge between your go-to-market teams as well as your product engineering team. CS and account AMs are the eyes and ears of the company's of the company to capture that product feedback and sentiment, and then engineering and product are the ones that are supposed to deliver on that. But a lot of times they have their own agenda. They have their own OKRs. So how have you, in your organization, help product and engineering and bridge the gap between EPD and CS?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I think, all our teams provide product feedback and pass along those customer requests. And we have monthly get-togethers to discuss what's coming through and why. We look at it as, it's the customer request, but it's also how do we support and continue to automate the go-to-market, right? It might be a high volume inbound lead process or account-based. And so kind of look at that dimension as well. Do we need to build more capabilities to enable those process? But the other piece that I want to bring up that I think is, yes, you bring that together and you kind of as a team have to, kind of determine what makes sense. But it's also super helpful to know what aspects of the product is driving that retention and growth. So using data and analyzing data is to really know, we call it like, what are the sticky features, or what are the features that are being adopted by different cohorts? Like, wow, healthcare is just loving this whole set of features for whatever reason. So we also try to bring in, the qualitative and the quantitative, the requests, along with what are we really seeing in terms of the behaviors in the business and the different cohorts. So that's where we lean on our RevOps team, Will, to help us with analysis on, getting those insights from the data and bringing it together with the requests. And I'm not saying we're doing it perfectly, but I do think that having both the qualitative and quantitative is really helping us to better prioritize. But we release a lot every release. I mean, we are right now still, you smiling, Mark, right? It's just, there is a lot that we're continuing to put out there. So it's really balancing the volume, but also, where we're going to get the volume right in terms of adoption, but also looking at it strategically through the insights of the data.
Mark, I think you had mentioned in the back talk of how you guys develop features and how that's tied back to internal and external expansions. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. So I think for us, we have, a really interesting use case in that our product, there's kind of 3 layers of use, right? There's the single player mode, which is an account executive or CSM goes in, uses a recap for themselves, right? There's another one where it's multiplayer, which is, okay, now they go in and they invite their friends, right? And all of a sudden there's more value. And then we have the third layer, which is really like multi-organizational, which is you now have an internal team and an external team. So we really, as we think about expansion and growth, there's really 2 levers, right? There's internal expansion and internal virality, aka NRR, and then there's also external virality, which then feeds potentially into customers for us, right? So like everyone on the customer side or the buyer side that interacts with Recapped can be a potential customer for us. So how do we drive the best possible experience, which then further drives that flywheel for us, right? And we think about this a lot when it comes to features. So, how do we make it, first off, how do we deliver the maximum value? And then 2, how do we make it so that a 1 + 1 = 3 situation, right? If I add you and we're able to collaborate together, what is the outsized impact that that's able to deliver? And if we make that really easy and try and remove as many levers from that, long term, we think that's going to be, that's how we get to snowflake levels, right? So we'll see what that works out to be.
No, and I think that you just raised, Mark, is, we can talk about how do we prioritize and which features we should build, but there's also the challenge of, do the customers even know that you have them? Like, they might miss those releases. So having a way to communicate both to that internal base to make sure they didn't miss that email or that webinar. We're doing quarterly product webinars with the product team so clients can join and see what's on the roadmap, but multiple ways to just make sure everybody knows what you have built, never mind trying to prioritize anything new. We're finding that can be a challenge as well. Or how do you do in-product pings or in-app pings? But you raise a good point. It's like you have to have that communication into your customer base to drive your NR is very different from what you're going to do out in the market. Because in the market, if you talk about too much, people are like, oh, I'm so confused. But internally, the customers who know you, right, you can have a richer discussion. So I think that's really smart, and something we've moved to recently too, is just that internal communication channels and having multiple ways to talk about what we do have and how they can use it.
There's a couple of questions that talk about in-app upgrades versus getting a person involved, and then also cross-selling, which is a good tee up to our next section, which is what strategies have proven effective for you all in terms of increasing NRR, and how do you identify those accounts and to pair with those strategies? So Rachel, maybe we could just start with you.
Well, yeah, we start with really looking at the accounts in 4 categories. Which ones are in adoption mode? Maybe they've just purchased or just haven't quite adopted everything they should be. Which ones are in protect mode? Maybe they've just gone live. They're kind of getting stabilized. We know where they are in a business. Which ones should we grow? And so we kind of look at where should we strategize based on where they are in their life cycle and where we think we can offer value to them. So we have then our set of growth accounts, which then we can put together strategic plans for growth to really work with our AMs and our sales teams. But by dividing up the portfolio strategically, it really gives us an idea of what accounts are going to be the ones where we think is a good timing for them. We have value to offer, and we're doing the right motions by our clients. So that's super important, right? You have to earn the right to grow. You have to know that it's the right fit. You can't just like, hey, just kind of spatter them with marketing materials. So that's how we think about it strategically. And then there's the fourth category, which is the ones we need to save. Those are the ones that are red or yellow. They kind of opt themselves into that category sometimes. But yeah, that's how we think about it strategically. And that way we can have different playbooks based on where that customer is in their life cycle.
Yeah, every CSM's favorite, the yellow category. Well, so I know you're going to talk a little bit about land and expand. So one of the questions is to what degree have you seen account planning used to improve NRR through account expansion, cross-sell, and upsell? So specifically for you, how are you guys thinking about strategies to grow NRR?
It's a must-have. I think that without intention, there's a lack of outcome. And so I think account planning is very, very important. And so it's a newer habit that we're building at Brazen, where we're going in and, once we get past are they adopted or are they at risk, they are ripe for expansion. We really look at it in three different ways. We look at it from an upsell. So is there an opportunity to do more of what they are doing currently? Is there a cross-sell opportunity? Because we do offer many products to help our customers reach and accelerate their hiring process. And I think one of the newest that we're really investing is in new teams. So we work with a lot of recruiters and talent acquisition professionals and in larger organizations. And so they are a lot of times decentralized. And so we're really looking to grow our expansion motion to include those new teams that we want to also highlight the value of our product that our existing customer, their existing team members are having, so that we can then share that value with other teams across that business.
So you have a component of upsell through features that were not sold during the initial engagement. And you're also looking for other stakeholders to sell into as part of the upsell and cross-sell motion. In the feature sets that you guys are upselling, how do you determine what's a good fit for part of the initial sell? What are you saving for later for the upsell? What are the stakeholders what if they all want to buy upfront, and how do you handle that when everything is sold upfront? Or is your package designed in which there is always a motion of upsell that comes in the later stages of the customer lifecycle journey?
I think it's really up to the customer. And the customer drives what they need, and what solution we can help guide them to is ultimately the package that we sell initially. So for example, a lot of our inbound requests have very intentional needs. So one of the products is virtual career and event software. So what our customers are looking for is exactly that. So during the sales process, we will highlight the other features that we do offer, and that's the start of our upsell motion. If there's any interest, we'll continue that conversation during the new business process. But by no means are we going to say, hey, you need to do it all in one swing. We really want to just focus on what their specific needs are. We're confident that because of our historical performance, that when we prove value with our customers, we will then drive future value because we're seen as really partners in solving their challenges around hiring.
I guess my question is, and Mark and Rachel, feel free to chime in as well. Let's say you have a customer that just has all the money in the world. They come in, they buy it all up front. They buy all the user licenses that they need. They buy the cross-functional. Do you have situations where that happens? And then at that point in time, what is your upsell mechanism and strategy to continue to grow the account?
I think we're talking in really hypothetical situations, because I would love a customer to knock on my door and ask for the full suite, please. But I think in that case, I think that's where the partnership with the product team really comes into play, right? We're going to sell everything that we got, but it's not going to solve all the problems. We know that. But we are certainly going to uncover more problems that we can help solve together. And I think that's where the relationship with our product team and our accounts team can really drive additional value with maybe new features, or maybe in ways to grow their program by new products. And so I think when I think about that situation, it's how do I drive continued value to solve the problems that they don't have today, but they do have tomorrow.
Yeah, and I think it's an excellent point. I think also I would love for more customers like that. That would be great. But ultimately, like if your customers are growing fast, there's always going to be expansion opportunity, right? They're hiring, they're growing. There's new use cases. You guys are going to be delivering new features, right? Like as Will and Rachel mentioned, like, so there's almost always, and actually one of the other questions that came through is, what does it look like with, user-led kind of in-app upgrades versus having a person? And we strategically made it something that people have to interact with our sales and customer success team, because not only, like, obviously we can get them set up with licenses, but we want to give them, data points and stories that they may have not been thinking about. Hey, here's a use case that one of our customers has been using. Maybe this is going to be beneficial for you, right? Or you're thinking about adding this team. Well, here's actually some best practices that we recommend, right? So giving value outside of just, unlocking more licenses, like that's easy. Like, but how do we deliver value at every single step of the interaction? That's something we always strive to do. But yeah, I mean, there's always something you can do if they're, if the company is growing and if they love your product.
Rachel and Will, from the planning side, a question from the crowd is, if you are using account planning for your most high priority accounts, who's owning the exercise for planning the account? Is it sales? Is it CS? Is it account management? Is it a combination? Who's leading that effort in your orgs?
When I think about that question, I think the first thing is who owns it is singular. It's got to be one entity that really owns it, but it is certainly a collaboration by all means. From my perspective, just because of how we've set up our customer success and accounts team, is our accounts team owns the contractual relationship. So that's their program, that's renewals and expansions. And our customer success team is really driving product adoption, knowledge, and training. And so from my perspective, account planning is really driven by the account management team with the support of the customer success team, providing a collaborative approach to solving the challenges of our customers.
Thank you, Will. Rachel, go ahead. Sorry.
Similar here. I think, yeah, it's got to be a team sport. It's just what are the different roles you're going to play on that team. And I think leaning on the, account management team or the sales team who, they really do know how to drive, that growth or the upsell motion, just letting everybody play the position they're really good at. I think to Will's point, it's super important. Otherwise it gets super confusing and, nothing like having a CSM who really joined the company to help drive that adoption and be that trusted advisor trying to pitch a deal. It does not work, as you probably have seen, Will, right? It's just like, does not work for the customer. I do want to, raise one other thing you asked about, sort of a customer signing up and buying everything. I will share that, we kind of went through a cycle the past couple of years. We did have clients who were just buying everything they thought they would need. And that kind of backfired both on them and us, because the idea that you would be able to necessarily, for us, drive the adoption and change across an organization to be able to get to those, and the number of end users they may have purchased, just sets up a tall order for that team as well as for us. So we've gotten a lot better at suggesting to the clients, hey, let's really figure out what we can do in the next 6 months so that we can get you up, especially big enterprise, get you up, make sure you're having success, and then we can move forward, versus selling, the whole package and then not being able to realize the value. And then you get into, we were having situations where we're at the renewal in 12 months and we hadn't even fully deployed everything they'd already intended to do. So, getting smarter about being consultative with the client about what's reasonable that they can achieve. They may have these big audacious goals, but we've learned that, you're only going to be able to get so far. So we've gotten a lot better about being good partners. I would have to give a shout out to our sales team. They're extraordinarily consultative and really helping our clients know, what should you start with? What could you reasonably be able to do? Because in the long run, like, this is a long game, right? You're building a relationship that you want to have with the client over years. It does pay off to do the right pace, as much as you love those dollars up front.
Yeah, I'll actually.
All the account executives listening to this just logged off, but good thing we do have some very consultative account executives all over the world.
But that raises an interesting, I think it's how you set up though, when you talk about the NRR or how teams get rewarded, our account teams they benefit from that upsell. So we built a system where they do care. They do get the revenue from that growth of that next renewal. So they want to set it up because it's going to continue for them to get them that revenue. So I think you do have to set it up the right way, and not every company is set up that way. So that not everybody is rewarded for thinking longer term. But I think you have to have a balance in there if you really want to build, the kind of organization that I think is going to get you that growth, unless you're a snowflake where it's just raining for them. But
that's exactly right. You need to have the format set up. Mark, I didn't mean to cut you off. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're absolutely right. I think what Rachel said is so spot on, right? It may look alluring to get that big check up front, but if then you all of a sudden have a year later, 20% adoption or 30% or mismanaged expectations, that's actually going to be worse for both sides than actually having 140% net retention on a much smaller base, right? And we've implemented this kind of from day one, where we wanted to give account executives upsell credit for the first 4, 6, 9 months of accounts, because they want to foster that relationship, right? Hey, I know we can land 50 accounts right now or 50 users, but let's start with 10. Let's really prove out success. Let's learn what works and what doesn't work, and then we can start rolling it out, right? And that actually, in the day, we believe is just going to be, it's the right way to do business for us. And so we've been doubling down on that as well.
This is the one time I wish I could see emojis. So, because I'm sure a lot of the CSMs are doing happy face emojis right now. So we have about 5 minutes left here. So let's skip to the portion on, we talked a lot about NRR. Let's talk about what's one specific takeaway and playbook that every organization, or you guys are doing specifically for your organization, and as a good takeaway for the team that they can go out and implement today, and what are the ROIs that you've seen from it? So Will, maybe we can start with you.
Yeah, I think my key takeaway is NRR is a goal of the business. And if the entire company is not aligned behind NRR, it's just harder. But when your company is aligned behind NRR as a key metric, you have the entire team working behind it. What that means is you have a product team constantly listening to our customers, really trying to figure out where the pain points are with the existing product within the existing marketplace, and really taking that as an opportunity to develop solutions for it that then they can throw back to the go-to-market teams to re-establish us as constantly being a partner in the process to solving their hiring challenges. So it's a full team effort, and it's just a lot easier and a lot more fun when it is.
Yeah, well, I love that. And just a gentle plug that what we do at Catalyst is we take meeting notes, and all of that gets pushed directly to Slack. So before a person even hops off their meeting with a customer, everyone in the company knows, hey, what went well with this conversation? What didn't go well? What are the feature requests that they're asking for? And you got to have that alignment outside of go-to-market. Like, even our engineers are commenting on these notes that are being taken, so that they are the ones that actually built what our customers are using. So they play a tremendous role in that. Mark, what about you guys? What's the takeaway and what's the strategy that you guys are implementing this year?
Yeah, excellent question. There's like 3 or 4 that, are top of mind, but I'll go with the first one, right? And I think it's kind of what I started off with. It's the mindset shift that NRR and growth is literally just a byproduct and a lagging indicator of the success and the value that we deliver to our customers. If we build an amazing product and we deliver value in our consultants that, help every single step of the way, the NRR will happen. And then it's just making sure that we have people that are accountable for it. So it's making it easy to see value and making it easy to spread that value, right? Those are kind of the main initiatives for us. And, it's talks like this that I think make me realize how lucky we are and that we get to use our own product for this, right? We create our own account plans. We onboard customers using our platform. We close a deal using our platform. So like for us, I think, we're just in a very fortunate position where we have an advantage that maybe other teams don't, right? And I think it's shown, right? But
Rachel.
Yeah, I echo what's already been said. I think it's super important to be aligned as an executive team across the different functions, because if you do have the goal, then each org will figure out how to impact it, right? I mean, we all align to our metrics at the end of the day. And so that kind of creates everybody thinking about what it's going to take. I think for my role as a chief customer officer, I also keep an eye on how are things trending, bringing insights back to the team so that they have visibility across the base, right? Like maybe working with the RevOps team, the Wills of the world, to make sure that we're seeing the forest for the trees, and then also figuring out those specific actions that we know, make a successful onboarding that drives to the right retention, that drives to the right growth. But I think it's super important to keep an eye on the trends over time and make sure that you're uncovering where, hey, this whole category is growing fast. These are declining and they're declining quickly, or we're seeing, what's going on here. I think, just make sure that you do keep an eye on those trends overall would be my advice.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much to the 3 of you. I'm going to ask Janisha to come back on stage here to close things out while we're waiting for her, because I've been warned that there is a 30-second delay. Really quickly, right now, how are you guys thinking about your customer knowledge bases? Oh, actually, Janisha, thought I was going to get one more question out, but you hopped on right away. We're having trouble hearing you.
Of course, every time. The technology knows they don't want to hear from me. They want to hear from y'all. So go ahead, ask your last question, Edward, and then I will speak in a second.
One last question, which is for customer communities, how are you guys thinking about how you build those communities in so that your customers can self-serve, grow their own use cases, grow their own adoption? Have either of you implemented anything like this at your organization, and are you seeing results from that?
At Brazen, we're implementing an LMS, and we're really trying to gamify it. And I think we're trying to make it fun, right? I think there's a strong and maybe even growing cohort of people that like to learn on their own paths, and we want to really foster that. So we offer not only that path, but also live trainings as well, and also ultimately just make our product easier so you can actually learn as you go. So we're trying to implement those 3 things.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Will. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Rachel. Janisha, I'm going to hand the floor over to you to close things out.
Amazing. Thank you all so much. That was so incredible. What I got from all of this is that teamwork really makes the dream work, right? So thank you all so much for joining. Super special thank you to Edward, our incredible moderator. Like, intense star power. I'm so envious. I got to learn from you. Super huge snaps to Rachel, Mark, and Will. And thank you to the folks at Catalyst again for sponsoring this incredible event. Folks, you're going to get the key takeaways, the recording, all of this incredible conversation afterwards. But right now, the panelists and I are going to head backstage to debrief. And again, thank you so much for joining. And feel free to look on the MSP website for what else we got going on. All right, folks, take care.
Thank you,
Awesome.
everyone.
Thanks, everybody.